Hi guys, it's Matthew again for another tutorial. Today I'm going to be running through creating waypoints, and we're going to be doing a bit of pathfinding and using arrays. You're going to be able to achieve this with your unit. It's going to be able to seek out the location of each waypoint and move towards them. Alright, well, let's get started. Simply, we're going to create a object called object player or object unit, whatever your object is. Now I have an object marker. It is simply just a blank or semi-blank object that gets destroyed when it collides with the player object. But in our create event of our player object, we are first initiating a couple of variables. We've got to create a select variable that is going to determine if it's selected or deselected. Then we've got to create our two arrays. So make sure you put your square braces around your array, and that's what we got for an array. And then we got our marker. Now mine's marker. You can call it waypoint for yourself, whatever you're comfortable with. And then we've got our count. The count object refers to what point we are in our navigating. But I'll cover that when we get to it. When you press onto the player or unit, you want to make it selected. So what we need to do is say if player is selected is false, so if it's not selected, then make it selected and then change the sprite. And if it is selected and I've clicked on it again, we're going to deselect it. We're going to set marker to 0 and we're going to change the sprite back. Alright, let's say we got it selected now. We'll jump into our left global press. Now, as I said, if player is selected as true, we have had it selected, then what we're going to do is we're going to store the mouse X in array X at the marker location, and that will be our first, and then we'll go to array Y and store our mouse Y, and then we're going to increment marker. Now briefly what this is doing is when I put the first waypoint down, that will be 0 and marker will be 0, so we're referring to the 0 point of the array. And when we put our second one down, that will be 1 and 1, and we'll be referring to our 1 point of the array, and so on and so forth. And it's going to be creating a marker each time that we're going to be referring to in the pathfinding part of the code. Now I'm creating this object each time as well, just so you can visually see what's going on screen. Alright, now I'll jump into what happens when I right press. When I right press, if the player is selected, we're going to make it deselected, and then what we're going to do is we're going to call our first alarm, alarm 0, and we're going to call it fairly immediately. And then of course make sure we change our sprite back to the deselected image. So we'll jump into alarm 0. In alarm 0, this is where all the action happens with the grid. We're going to first check as long as marker is the larger value than counter. You can do it the other way around. You can say if counter is smaller than marker, continue doing this. It first creates a grid. It then, so by creating a grid, you type in a variable that stores grid, and make grid equal to mp grid create at 0, 0 at room width divided by I'm using 32, and room height by 32, and 32 and 32. What this is the size of the actual grid block. So if I jump over here, as you can see, this is a 32 by 32 grid. Pretty much what happens. So if I wanted to make, if I had a smaller object and it was 10 by 10, I may want to use a 10 by 10 grid to make it more precise. Or if you don't need it so precise, you can make it a larger grid. Of course, making a larger grid will make it more blocky with its movement, but it's completely up to you. Then what we're going to do is we're going to say path add, and then MP grid add instances. This adds an instance to your path, and then we're going to add block or wall or whatever you guys have called as your objects that you want your units to go around, and we're going to make that precise. You don't need to make it precise, but I have done. And then MP grid path, and then what we're going to do is we're going to add our path, add our grid, then we're going to add our path, and then we're going to add our current location. So this is where we start on the grid, and then this is where we're going to finish on our grid. And as you can see, I've used array X and array Y. This would be the first location. If this is the first time around, it would be the first waypoint location. All right. So this is basically your waypoint right here. And then what we're going to do is when we've finished that, we're going to say yes, allow 1. You can say true if you wish. And then we're going to start the path. And then we're going to call this alarm and alarm 1. And this alarm 1, what is it doing is checking to see as soon as, I'll jump back into the player actually, as soon as it's going to say if player has reached this location and this location, then it's going to increment, and then it's going to call the pathfinding script again. So it's going to continue waiting until such time the player itself has found the location, the first waypoint location. And until it does, it will continue calling this script over and over and over. And that is pretty much it. Yep, that is it, guys. I hope this has been handy. Sorry for being really quick. But please, comment, like, subscribe. Let me know what you think, and I'm, more than willing to try to give you any more extra help with this tutorial if you need some. All right, thank you. I'll catch you next time.